So I used to think the balance debate for entrepreneurs had two different sides, right? There was the hustle nonstop, the grind culture community that just pushed sacrificing everything in the pursuit of your business, right? And then there was the other side, which really emphasized having balance in your life, striking the balance between enjoying your life and the fruits of your labor and also working and building something with your life. And so I used to think that those two sides were deeply opposing, and so through my life I've lived on both sides, right? And I think that what I've come to conclude is that both of them are giving you a half truth, right? But neither wants to concede an inch and wants to say that what they are preaching is gospel, right? And so today we're going to be talking about the balance debate for entrepreneurs and if balance is actually right for entrepreneurs and what that actually looks like in practice. So let's get into it. So, as I said, there's two sides to this debate, both of them saying they are right, it's the right way to live, and yet neither one will concede an inch to the other. And so the first one that we'll discuss is the no balance camp, the ones that want to grind all the time, right? And I think a huge proponent of this is Alex Hormozi, one of the biggest figures in the entrepreneurial space. And in fact, he had a quote that said, there are people who talk about work life balance, there are people who become the best in the world. These are not the same people, right? And so, more details on this camp. This camp is often the ones that are emphasizing these 12-hour work days. You're sacrificing major life events in the pursuit of work and building a business, right? And, ultimately, I think if you were to summarize what this side's stance is, it's that you are sacrificing a lot of moments in your life in order to be better at your work, your craft, and be more worldly successful, for lack of a better term. And, you know, I mentioned Alex Hormozi and going back to him as he's one of the more prominent figures of the long hours community and working all the time. There's actually a lot more to his quote than I think people realize. I don't think that his point is to completely destroy your life. Because if you look at how he works a lot still, even, now that he is successful, but he still finds time for the other things in life, such as his wife and his kid that he's going to have. So I think that his point isn't destroy your life. So I think that what his point is don't use balance as a cover for mediocrity and mediocre results. I think it's undeniable. You have to give him credit with that. That, to be an outlier, you have to be an outlier with your habits, with your daily inputs, right? And outlier outcomes require outlier inputs. I'm saying it in several different ways, so hopefully it'll hit home that there is truth in the fact that if you want to be different from the average person, you have to act differently than them, right? And so overall, I think this camp has a lot of truth to it. I think that, if I was to pick a camp out of these two opposing sides, which one do I lean closer to? It would most likely be this one. That being said, I still think that there's several things that they miss that I don't agree with, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But first, we're going to get into the other camp, the protect your life camp, the side that often focuses more on, in a corporate world, it would be work life balance would be the term, but in entrepreneurial spaces, it's often heard with terms like lifestyle design, right? And a big figure in this community would be Dan Coe. He, has several videos on his YouTube channel where he's talking about the 4 hour workday. And I don't think that what he is arguing is that you should have balance and that in the way that you shouldn't work long hours, right? I think that what his argument is not laziness, but it's rather focus on efficiency and sustainability. I think that what I get from his videos is that his core critique is glorifying sacrifice doesn't mean that you have to be sacrificing all these things when you're not producing anything. So what I'm trying to say by that is that simply sitting at a desk for 12 hours doesn't create results, right? If I sit at this desk for 12 hours a day without being intentional about what I'm doing and being efficient with my work, I'm not going to get anything done, whether I sit here 12 hours or 3 hours, right? And so activity alone isn't the achievement, but rather being efficient with what you're doing is. And I think that this is something that I've really picked up from Dan Coe is that you have to be focus oriented on your specific goals. And what you have to do is you have to try to maximize efficiency in a shorter time. And I think that setting that shorter time puts more internal pressure on yourself and makes you be more productive in that different time space. And I think overall, just shifting to focusing on outputs, which is task completed, goals met, etc., rather than inputs, in this situation, time at the desk, is really the angle that I think that he tries to look at and what I've gathered from him. And I think it really comes down to the deep work philosophy, right? Why grind 12 hours when 5 hours of real, focused, intentional effort gets you further along your path, right? So it's hours being the input isn't the metric in this case that you want to be tracking. Rather, it's output. Because if you're working 5 hours of focused work, you're going to get more done than if you're just sitting there for 12 hours half focused. So I'm kind of beating a dead horse with this one, but what I'm trying to get at is just that when you're in the lifestyle design camp, I think a lot of what we see on the internet now is not necessarily you need balance in the sense that, oh, you should have 8 hours of work and then 8 hours of play. Rather, it's, hey, let's design our business and our life in a system so that we're maximizing the efficiency and attacking it full head on for 4 to 5 hours a day. And then the rest of the day, we're recovering. We're allowing our brain to rest, right? And I think another great point is the burnout argument, right? If you were doing 12-hour days over and over and over, you're going to hit a point where it's burnout. And I know there's different opinions on that about, you won't burn out if you have true purpose, all those things. That's a conversation for another day. But what I want to look at is the fact that the pure grind leads to delayed mediocrity because our brains only have a certain capacity to operate at a high efficient level. And most people's would be, I'd be comfortable saying, well under the 10-hour range that gets glorified online. Give this camp its flowers as well. They're not wrong in a sense, but also not exactly what I align with and what I find works optimally. And so after dissecting both of those, we can kind of get to the point where we understand that both camps are incomplete, right? The Hormozi grinded out mentality, I think it's a season. And I think that's something that I haven't really heard him frame it like. He might have, and I might have just missed it, but I haven't heard him frame it as a season. I think balance as a permanent state is a myth, but I also think that no balance as a permanent state is also a myth because nobody runs at 100% indefinitely, right? You can't be 100% balanced all your life and you can't be 100% grinded out all your life. And this is something I really noticed at when I was still working at PwC because I had this season where I was really grinding. It was during busy season at PwC. I was doing 55 hours a week there, and then after work, I would be building my own business on the side, right? And there's just a burnout that you reach eventually where your body can't handle it anymore. And after I got through that season, I kind of lost my intentionality, right? I took my foot off the gas and it actually affected a lot of areas of my life. I lost the grip on work, relationships, my faith slipped a little bit. And I think that unintentional drift season where you're just not really, you're rather directionless is a real danger that neither of the camps argue about or really warn you about. And so, all that being said, both camps have truth, both camps have flaws, but here's what I have found works the best. I think that the question, rather than should I have balance, should I not have balance, should be reframed to, okay, what does this season of life call for? And so, what I mean by that is we all have different seasons of our life. We have different seasons where some are more focused on family, relationships, advancing in a personal manner, right? But then others are, hey, I need to just grind my business and I need to reach the next level. I need to work in a way that is just going to exponentially increase my earnings or my profit, whatever it may be. I've decided that the best way to handle it in my life is to have grind seasons and recovery seasons. So the grind season more aligns with what Hormozi would say, right? And so this is where I'm probably going to be working 10 hours a day, heavy, hands down, face on the screen, like I'm all in. And, during these times, I might slip a little bit in other areas of my life, whether it be my health, my relationships, people might see me less, but they have to respect it because I'm open that I am in this season. You've seen this if you're in the online space with Imam Gadzhi's monk mode videos. He lets everyone know that he is going into this grind session, this grind season, right? So the other season is the recovery and the building season, right? I'm intentional with restoration of relationships, my faith, my health, and really focusing on those. So it's not that we're beginning this drifting stage where we're not intentional with our business, because I think it's still important that you're putting in those solid 4 hours a day at least, but it's just redirecting your focus onto more personal aspects. The key variable in both of these is intentionality and setting the tone about what that season is like. I actually have a 3-step diagnostic of questions that I like to ask myself whenever I'm going into one of these seasons to actually determine what the next season of my life calls for and what the goals are going to be for that season. And so the first one is, where do I feel furthest from the man God has called me to be right now? And this applies overall. This could be in your work, this could be spiritually, physically, whatever it may be. You need to pick where you feel furthest away from the man that God called you to be. Second question is, if I pursued a season directed fully towards that, what are the 3 to 5 things that I need to accomplish to call it complete? So once again, we're being intentional with what goals we're trying to accomplish in this season. We're being very intentional about, okay, these are the things I want to get done. Once these are done, I can call that season complete. And thirdly, what non-negotiables do I protect from the other side no matter what? So an example of this would be, say I'm in a grind season. I still want to make sure I'm spending time with the Lord every single morning, non-negotiable, before I open my laptop, right? And if you're in a recovery season, it might be I still put in at least 3 hours of deep focused work on my business. And this ensures that you don't slip too far in any direction, because during these seasons you will feel yourself, losing grip on the other side. For instance, if I'm deep in my business season and I'm deep in a grind season, it's likely that I'll be at the desk more, so my health might slip a little bit. I might see a little bit more fat around the love handles. I might, not see my abs as visibly, things like that, because I'm so deeply focused and intentional about what I'm going after in this season. And I think that the biggest thing to remember behind all this is, what are you actually doing all this for, right? Because it's so easy to get sucked into the balance side or the grind 24/7 side, that we have to remember, what are we actually doing all this for? I know for me, it was for freedom. That's why I left PwC. That's why I jumped into entrepreneurship, because I just wanted freedom in my life. I wanted to be able to be free to enjoy God's creation as I pleased and work on things that I'm passionate about and that give me joy in life. And so, Hormozi is right that in order to be exceptional, you have to be an exception. That's no doubt about it. But Dan Coe and that side is also right that blindly hustling for 12 hours a day is not efficient and not really going to push the needle forward. But what I want you to understand, if you've made it this far in the video, is that the biggest danger is not picking one side or the other. It's being somewhere in the middle where you're not in an intentional season, right? You're just kind of unintentionally drifting along in this lull in between the two. And the greatest thing that's helped me with making sure I'm never in that is thinking in seasons. Define the outcomes, define the season that we're in, and go at it 100% no matter what it is. And most importantly, always keep your why at the forefront of your mind, whether it's got to be on your lock screen or just on a piece of paper at your desk. Always remember your deeper why and why you're doing everything, and be a good steward of the blessings that the Lord has given you along the way. So, if this video resonated with you and you found it entertaining, you found it helpful, I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. Be sure to comment whatever you think. If you have any questions, please, of course, ask. I always try and answer anything that's left down below. And if you're new here, Be sure to subscribe. I got more content coming just like this in the near future, along with more vlogs and tax-based content. And as always, never stop your relentless pursuit of continuous improvement. I'll look forward to us talking again soon.